but I will start. Good evening. This is Pastor Barbara, aka Preacher with Ferrets. This is Wednesday night. On Wednesday night, we have a live Bible study in the Old Testament. We're going to talk about the Northern Kingdom because we're studying the history of God's people, the Jews, when their kingdom was divided. 10 tribes made the Northern Kingdom called Israel, and 2 tribes made up the Southern Kingdom, referred to as Judah. Jerusalem was the capital city of the southern tribe called Judah, and Samaria was the capital city of the northern tribe. Naaman was the captain of the Syrian army. The nation of Israel is long and narrow. Right up at the top to the northeast is Syria. Was then, still is now. The young woman who was a maid to the Syrian captive's wife, she said, I would that the Lord God was with the prophet here in Samaria, for he would recover him of his leprosy. Now, even though the northern kingdom and the companies that made up the northern kingdom didn't serve God, they had more prophets. In the study of the divided kingdom, there's more going on. The more interesting things are happening in those 10 tribes to the north, even though the temple and worship and so forth is going on in the southern kingdom. She just said, I wish that we had a prophet here in Samaria or in the capital of the northern tribes. Because if we had a real prophet, he would pray for your husband and your husband would be healed of his leprosy. So the king of Syria said, thus and thus said the maid that is in the land of Israel. And the king of Syria said, go to, go. I'll send a letter to the king of Israel. So we have up here Syria, which is not part of Israel. Then we have 10 tribes, which we call Israel, and 2 that we call Judah. The king said, okay, I'm king of Syria, the country right next to the northern portion, which we refer to as Israel. I'll write the king of Israel a letter. He took 10 talents of silver, 6,000 pieces of gold, and 10 changes of raiment. Remember from past things we've studied at the same period of time, whenever you asked a favor, you always gave gifts to the person you were going to ask a favor of. So he writes this letter to the king of Israel. And he says, behold, I have sent a man by the name of Naaman, my servant, to you, that he might recover of his leprosy. You know, he's in the next kingdom to the south. I'm sending these gifts. I'm sending this man. He's special to me. He's important in our country. He's important to me. And it came to pass that when the king of Israel read the letter, he rent or ripped his clothes. When people were angry or sad or grieving, they would rip their clothes. And he said, am I God to kill and to make alive? What's this king writing me a letter? I can't take a sick man and give him life. This man sends me someone to recover. I pray, and you see that he seeks a quarrel against me? What's this guy writing to me for? So it was that when Elisha, remember Elisha is the main prophet now. He was the one that told Elijah he would like to have twice the good spirit that the prophet Elijah has. And Elijah said, if you see me when I'm taken away from you, then you will have the double portion of my spirit that you're asking for. And Elijah went to heaven in a chariot of fire. And Elisha was watching him and saw him as the chariot went into the heavens, and his mantle that he wore around himself, his shoulders, fell to the ground. Elisha picked it up, cast it toward the Jordan River, and the waters parted, and he walked back over. And he's been doing miracles since then. And so Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel rent his clothes. He's all upset. And he says, wherefore have you rent your clothes? What are you ripping your clothes for? Let him come now to me, and he'll find out there is a prophet in Israel. And Naaman came with his horses and his chariot, and he stood at the door of the house of Elisha. Here's this special person, very friendly to the king of Syria. The king of Syria has sent him south where there is a prophet of God so that he can be cured. Well, he's feeling already that he's pretty special. And he thinks, I guess, that there's going to be a lot of people, there's going to be a big deal, they're going to have a big meeting, they're going to have a big prayer, something special is going to happen, and he's going to get cured of his leprosy. Well, that isn't what happens. Elisha stood at the door. Naaman's out on the other side of the door. Naaman was wroth. He was mad. And he went away. And he said, behold, I thought, he'll surely come out and see me, and he'll stand, and he'll call on the name of his God. And they're going to make a big deal. Something special is going to happen, and I will recover my leprosy. And he's telling me, go wash in the Jordan River. He's from Syria. He said, we got a couple rivers, the Abana, the Pharpar River in Damascus. They got better water than the Jordan River. Why don't I go wash in them and get clean? And he's angry, and he turns away in a rage. But his servants figure out, this guy's going to blow it. And they said, my father, if the prophet had asked you to do some big thing, you do it. If he'd have told you to wear some special garment, if he'd have told you to conduct yourself in a specific way, different, you would do it. So why are you upset that the only thing he's asked you to do is to go bathe in the Jordan River? If the prophet had bid you to do some great thing, wouldn't you have done it? How much rather then when he says, wash and be clean? It's not a big thing to ask you to do. So he goes down and he dipped himself 7 times in the Jordan, according to the saying of the man of God. In other words, that's what the prophet told him to do. That's what he did. And after he had dipped himself 7 times in the Jordan River, his flesh became like the flesh of a child, and he was clean. The closest I've ever seen of lepers. I was in, over the Christmas holidays one year, I was teaching public school, but Sister Rose and I went to Hawaii. And we were fortunate. We were able to find a trip that took us to all of the islands except one, because we were supposed to hit it on Christmas Day. And I think the fellow that was in charge of that tour just didn't want to do it and came up with some reason, and we didn't go to that one island. People don't live there. It's a place where they only practice the Army practices some of what they do. And they drop bombs and so forth there. But we went to all the other islands, and we went to an island that had a place on it where lepers lived. Leprosy is very catchy, and there's no cure for it. It eats flesh. It literally eats skin, and it just drops away. People's nose will fall off their face, skin from their face. It's a horrible thing. In Bible times, in Old Testament times, people were required to call out unclean to warn people, if you come near me, I have an incurable disease. And we overlooked, we were on a high spot on the island. We could look down and we could see this whole colony of people beneath us. I'm going to say maybe a quarter of a mile to a half a mile, this big drop off, and we could see them. There was a Catholic priest that had dedicated himself. I wish I could remember his name, and I wish I could find the book that I bought about his life. But he smoked a pipe, and he would let lepers, the people he was pastoring, smoke the same pipe. He didn't get leprosy for many, many years, something like 30 or 40 years. He finally got leprosy, and it cost him his life. But that's the closest I've ever been to something like that. So it came to pass. I'm on the wrong page. He went down, he dipped himself 7 times in the Jordan, and his flesh became like the flesh of a baby. Not old, not sick, but fresh, brand new, like a little child. And he returned to the man of God, to Elisha the prophet. and all of his company, all the people that had come with him from Syria. And he said, now I know that there's no God in all the earth but in Israel. Now therefore I pray thee, take a blessing of thy servant. And he said, as the Lord liveth, before whom I stand, I will receive none. And he urged him to take it. And all of his chariots, he wanted to give him something special. And Naaman said, shall there not then, I pray thee, be given to thy servant 2 mules? In other words, he wanted to give him something. Father Damien, thank you. That was his name. And he was known as the leper priest. A very, very, he reminds me a lot of Mother Teresa. Somebody that just gave her whole life. So now he's wanting to give him something, pay him something. And in verse 18 he says, is this thing the Lord pardon thy servant, that when my master goeth into the house of Rimmon to worship there, but he leaneth on my hand, and I bow myself in the house of Rimmon. When I bow down myself in the house of Rimmon, the Lord pardon thy servant in this thing. And he said unto him, go in peace. So he departed from him a little way. Now, we continue in 2 Kings chapter 5, the next verse. We're still with Elisha. Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, the man of God, said, behold, my master had spared Naaman the Syrian in not receiving at his hands that which he brought. But as the Lord liveth, I will run after him and take somewhat of him. So Gehazi followed after Naaman, and when Naaman saw him running after him, he got down off of his chariot to meet him. And he said, is everything fine? Is everything okay? And he said, all is well. My master sent me, saying, behold, even now there come to me from Mount Ephraim 2 young men of the sons of the prophets. Give them, I pray thee, a talent of silver, or 2 changes of garments, but let us give you something. And Naaman said, be content, take 2 talents. And he urged him. And he bound 2 talents of silver in 2 bags with 2 changes of garments, and laid them upon 2 of his servants. And they took them. And when he came to the tower, he took them from their hand, and he bestowed them in the house. And he let the men go, and they departed. But he went in and stood before his master. And Elisha said unto him, where are you come from? Where have you been? And he said, thy servant went no whither. Nowhere. And he said unto him, went not mine heart with thee? Do you think you can go and pull something off like this and I'm not going to know about it? When this man turned again his chariot to meet thee, is it a time to receive money and to receive garments and olive yards and vineyards and sheep and oxen and manservants and maidservants? The leprosy, therefore, of Naaman shall cleave unto thee. The leprosy that Naaman had will now be your leprosy, and unto thy seed forever, your children and their offspring. And he went out from his presence, a leper, as white as snow. Now we have something else involving the prophet Elisha. And we're in the next chapter, 2 Kings chapter 6. Let me get a little bit of diet reveal. The sons of the prophets said unto Elisha, the prophet, Behold, now the place where we dwell with thee is too small for us. We're your servants. You have your family. Then you have us. It's too small of a place for all of us. Let us go, we pray thee, to Jordan. And let's have every man take a beam. And let us place there a place where we can dwell. So he said, okay, go. And he said, be content, I pray thee, and go with your servants. And he answered, I will go. So he went with them, and when they came to Jordan, they cut down some wood. Now they're working with an axe. Something that they use that we're familiar with. You know what an axe head is. You've got a handle, and then you've got the middle axe on the end of the handle. And as they cut down wood, one was felling a beam, cutting off a branch. And as one was felling a beam, the axe head fell into the water. And he cried and said, Alas, master, it was borrowed. And you know the story. It's bad enough if you damage something, if you lose something, if you misplace it. But if it's not even yours, I mean, it's understood that when you borrow something, you should return it in the exact same shape that you got it in. And he said, alas, it was borrowed. And the man of God, that would be Elisha, said, where fell it? Exactly where did it fall to? And he showed him. And he cut down a stick and he cast it in. And the iron came up to the top of the water, and it did swim. Therefore he said, take it up to thee. And he put out his hand, and he took it. Now, we have one more matter of blindness that has something to do with the Syrians also. A couple of things, and then we will be where we were when we ended last Wednesday. Then the king of Syria made war against Israel, the same place where he sent Naaman to get healed of his leprosy. And he said to his servants, in such and such a place is where I'm going to camp. And the man of God, that would be Elisha, sent unto the king of Israel, saying, beware that thou shalt not pass this place because that's going to be where my camp is going to be. For neither the Syrians are come down, and the king of Israel sent up to the place where the man of God told him and warned him about him. And he saved himself there, not once nor twice. Therefore the heart of the king of Syria was sore troubled for this thing. And he called his servants, and he said unto them, Will you not show me which of us is king of Israel? And one of the servants said, None of us, O king, but Elisha the prophet that is in Israel telleth the king of Israel the words that you spoke in my bedchamber. Something that was spoken in my room in private. And one of his servants says, None, my lord, but Elisha the prophet is in Israel. He can tell the king what those words were that were spoken in your bedchamber. And he said, Go and spy where he is, that I can send and fetch him. And it was told him, saying, Behold, he is in Dothan. So he sent horses, chariots. You want a favor? You send presents. So he sent horses and chariots and a great host. And they came at night, and they compassed about the city. And when the servant of the man of God got up early, Elisha's servant got up early, there was a host that compassed the city with horses and chariots. And his servant said, Alas, my master, how shall we do? And he said, Fear not. They that be with us are more that be with them. In other words, don't worry, prophet. There's more of us than there is them. And Elisha prayed and said, Lord, I pray thee, open his eyes that he may see. And the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw. And behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire around about Elisha. And when they came down to him, Elisha prayed unto the Lord and said, Smite this people, I pray thee, with blindness. And he smote them with blindness according to the word of Elisha. Elisha sees all of them. It occurs to him one way of winning if you're in a battle, and if there's all of a sudden there's horses and there's chariots and you don't know what's going on. One way of winning is to make everybody in the army that's fighting against you blind. And he smote them with blindness according to the word of Elisha. In other words, as Elisha prayed, that's what happened. And Elisha said unto them, This is not the way, neither is this the city. Follow me, and I will bring to you the man that you're looking for. But he led them to Samaria. Samaria is the capital of Israel. And the king of Israel said unto Elisha, when he saw them, My father, shall I smite them? Shall I smite them? And he answered, Thou shalt not smite them. Wouldst thou smite those with whom you've taken captive with your sword and with bow? If you have taken and made captive these people, why would you smite them? They're already you have taken them captive. Why would you need to smite them? You've taken them captive with your sword and with your bow. Put bread and water before them that they can eat and drink and go to their master. And he prepared great provision for them. And when they'd eaten and had something to drink, he sent them away, and they went to their master. So the bands of Syria came no more into the land of Israel. Now we have a couple of other instances, and then we're back where we ended last week. It came to pass after this that Ben-Hadad, king of Syria, gathered up his hosts and went and besieged Samaria. Samaria is the capital of Israel, just south of them. And there was a great famine in Samaria, and behold, they besieged it until the donkey's head was sold for 80, 80 pieces of silver, and the fourth part of a cab of dove's dung for 5 pieces of silver. And the king of Israel was passing by on the wall, and there cried a woman unto him, saying, Help my lord, O king. And he said, If the Lord do not help thee, when shall I help thee? You're crying to God. If he doesn't help you, what can I do for you? And how can I help you? Out of the barn floor or out of the wine press? You need food. You need something to drink. And the king said unto her, What aileth thee? What's the matter with you? And she said, This woman said unto me, Give thy son, that we may eat him today, and we'll eat my son tomorrow. In other words, there's a famine. They are starved. And there are 2 women with children. Let's eat your child for dinner today. And we'll eat my child. This is how bad the famine was. So we boiled my son, and we ate him. And I said unto her the next day, Give thy son. All right, we ate my son yesterday. Now bring your son. That we may eat him. But she had hidden her son. And it came to pass when the king heard these words of the woman, that he ripped his clothes. And it came to pass, he passed by the wall, and the people looked, and behold, he had sackcloth within upon his flesh. Sackcloth was the rags you would put on when you ripped your good clothing. And he said, God do so and more also to me, if the head of Elisha, the son of Shaphat, shall stand on him this day. But Elisha sat in his house, and the elders sat with him. And the king sent a man from before him, but the messenger came to him. He came to the elders. See ye how this son of a murderer has has sent to take away my head? Look, when the messenger comes, shut the door and hold him fast at the door. Is it not the sound of the master's feet behind him? And while he yet talked with them, behold, the messenger came down to him. And he said, behold, this is evil of the Lord. What should I wait for the Lord any longer? Then Elisha the prophet said, hear ye the word of the Lord. This is what the Lord says to do. Tomorrow, about this time, shall a measure of fine flour be sold for a shekel, and 2 measures of barley for a shekel in the gate of Samaria? In the gate of the city was where business was done. And if prices for things were going to be changed, it would be there that people would be notified of it. Then a lord on whose hand the king leaned, so the king is leaning on someone, answered the man of God, the prophet, and said, behold, if the Lord would make windows in heaven, might this thing be? Behold, you'll see it with your eyes, but don't eat any of it. And there were 4 leprous men, 4 men that were lepers. And they said one to the other, why sit we here until we die? If we say we will enter into the city, then the famine is in the city, and we shall die there. If we go into the city, we're lepers. We're not supposed to go where there's people. If we go in to the city, then that city has come in contact with lepers. And we'll die there. But if we sit here, we die too. So if we go into the city, we make it leprous and the whole city dies. If we don't, then we die. We're going to die one way or the other. Therefore come, let us fall into the host of the Syrians. If they save us alive, we shall live. But if they kill us, we'll die. And they rose up at twilight. They went into the camp of the Syrians. And when they got to the uttermost, the farthest part, the farthest away you can go, there was nobody there. For the Lord had made the host of the Syrians to hear a noise of the chariots and the noise of the horses and the noise of the great host of all the people. And they said one to another, lo, the king of Israel has hired against us the kings of the Hittites and the kings of the Egyptians to come upon us. These Syrians have gone off and they've hired people from other countries to come after us. They arose and they fled at twilight. And they left their tent and their horses and their donkeys, even their camp, and they just fled for their life. And when these lepers came to the uttermost part of the camp, they went as far into the camp as you can go. They went into one tent, did eat and drink, and carried then silver and gold and raiment, clothing. And they went into another tent, and they carried then also, and went and hid it. Then they said one to another, we did pretty good. Actually, it says, we do not well. This day is a good day of glad tidings, and we hold our peace. If we tarry till the morning light, some mischief will come upon us. Let's go and tell the king's household what's going on. So they came and they called to the porter of the city, and they told him, we came to the Syrians' camp, and there was no man, nor the voice of a man. We didn't see anybody. We didn't hear anybody. And their horses were tied up, and their donkeys were tied up, and their tents, well, you can see, these are their tents. And he called the porters, and they told it to the king's house within. And the king arose at night, and he said unto his servants, I will now show you what the Syrians have done to us. They know that we be hungry. They know that. I'm reading the exact language of the King James Version. They know we be hungry. Therefore, they've gone out of the camp to hide in the field, saying that when we come out of the city, they're going to rush in there and take us alive. And one of the servants said, let some take, I pray thee, 5 of the horses that remain, which are left in the city. Behold, there as all the multitude of Israel that are left in it. They're even as all the multitude of the Israelites that are consumed. Let us send and see. Let's try it, see what happens. They took 2 chariot horses, and the king sent after the host of the Syrians, saying, go see. They went after them into Jordan, and lo, it was full of garments and vessels, containers. So a measure of fine flour was sold for a shekel, and 2 measures of barley for a shekel, according to the word of the Lord. And the king appointed the Lord on whose hand he leaned. Remember, he was leaning on someone's hand. And the people trotted against him in the gate, and he died, as the man of God had said, or as the prophet said it would happen. It came to pass, when the man of God had spoken to the king, saying, 2 measures of barley for a shekel, and a measure of fine flour for a shekel, shall be tomorrow about this time in the gate of Samaria. He remembered what he heard the prophet say. And he said, behold, you'll see it with your eyes, but don't eat. Your eyes will see this happen, but don't eat it. And so it fell out upon him that the people trode upon him in the gate. And so he died. Now they were in the land of the Shumamites, or in Shuma. And there had been prophesied that there would be a 7-year famine. Now the 7-year famine was over. I I want to check something here in my Bible. I'm going to back off because I don't want to. Okay. Yeah, we're going to get to the young prince. Let's see, it's about 8 o'clock. We'll have plenty of time to get to that. And we'll talk a little bit about the house of Ahab. Do you remember that there was judgment pronounced by one of the prophets against Ahab and all of his house? Remember that it was said that the queen Jezebel would be thrown out or fall out of a window and would bleed all over, and that all of their male offsprings, if they died in the city, they would be eaten by wolves or dogs, and if they died in the country, they would be eaten by birds. We'll get to them just about the time we're closing. It came to pass that when this 7 years of famine, now we know there was famine, because one woman, they ate her child, and they were going to eat another woman's child. This is how bad the famine was. Well, now the famine is coming to an end. And she went forth to cry to her king for her house and for her land. And the king talked with Gehazi, the servant of the man of God, Elisha's servant. Tell me, I pray thee, all the great things that Elisha has done. And it came to pass, move it here a little closer. For some reason, I'm not getting light where I'm trying to read. As it came to pass, as he was telling the king how he restored a dead body to life, and that, behold, a woman whose son he restored to life cried to the king for her house and for her land. And Gehazi said, my lord, O king, this is the woman, and this is her son, whom Elijah restored to life. And when the king asked the woman, she said, so the king appointed unto her a certain officer, saying, restore all that was hers. Everything that belonged to her before this terrible thing happened, see that she gets it back. And all the fruits of the field since the day that she left the land until now. Now we go on to another couple of incidences. And Elisha came to Damascus. Damascus is still the capital city of Syria. And Ben-Hadad was king of Syria. He was sick. And somebody told him, the man of God is here. And the king said to Hazael, take a present in your hand. Remember, if you're going to ask for a favor, you take gifts. Take a present in your hand and go meet the man of God and inquire of the Lord by him, saying, shall I recover of this disease? You're going to inquire of God. But the way you're going to inquire of God is to ask God's servant, will I recover of this disease? So Hazael went to meet him and took a present with him, even of every good thing of Damascus, whatever Damascus is known for. 40 camels burden, whatever you could load on 40 camels. It came up and stood before him and said, the son of Ben-Hadad, king of Syria, has sent me to thee, saying, shall I recover of this disease? And Elisha said to him, go say unto him, thou mayest certainly recover. Howbeit, the Lord hath showed me that he shall surely die. And the Lord has shown me that he's going to die. But I'm telling you, go and tell him he's going to recover. And he settled his countenance, his facial expression, steadfastly until he was ashamed. And the man of God, the prophet Elisha, wept, he cried. And Hazael said, why are you crying? Why weepeth my Lord? And he answered, because I know the evil that thou wilt do unto the children of Israel. I know your plan. Their strong holds wilt thou set on fire. Their young men will you slay with the sword, and you will dash their children and rip up their women with child. The women who are pregnant, you will rip their babies from them. That's why I'm crying. I know what your plans are. And Hazael said, but what is thy servant a dog, that you should do this great thing? Do I look like a dog to you? Do I look like somebody that would do that? So he departed from Elisha, and he came to his master, who said to him, what said Elisha to thee? And he answered, he told me that you would recover. And it came to pass on the morrow, on the next day, that he took a thick cloth, and he dipped it in water, and he spread it on his face, so that he died. And Hazael reigned in his place. Now, we have a couple of comments about something that's going on before we come to anything of any importance that happened. Ahaziah assists Jehoram against Syria. Just a couple of verses. He went with Jehoram, the son of Ahab. Ahab was the previous king of Israel. Husband of Jezebel. In Ramoth Gilead. And the Syrians wounded Joram. And King Joram went back to be healed in Jezreel of the wounds that the Syrians had given him when he fought against Hazael, the king of Syria. And Ahaziah, the son of Jehoram, the king of Judah, went down to see Joram, the son of Ahab, in Jezreel, because he was sick. Now, as far as what's going on in Judah, he walked into their council with Jehoram the son of Ahab, king of Israel, to war against the king of Syria. And the Syrians smote him. Now, Joram goes to be healed in Jezreel of the wounds that the Syrians gave him. And Ahaziah, the son of Jehoram, king of Judah, went down to see Joram, the son of Ahab, in Jezreel because he was sick. Now we come to Jehu. We're coming to another king. And I want to see how far we are to this little boy king. And I think I'm going to end. Well, we will get as far as the judgment pronounced about the house of Ahab. Remember, it was said that their male sons would all die in a terrible way. Well, Jehu, he served for 28 years. Some of those years were good, some were bad. Jehu is anointed king by the orders of Elisha, the prophet. And Elisha the prophet called one of the children of the prophets, and he said unto him, gird up your loins, put your clothes on, get ready to go. Take this box of oil in your hand and go to Ramoth Gilead. And when you get there, look out, and Jehu, the son of Jehoshaphat is going to be a good king. He has been a good king. When you see him, look there, Jehu, the son of Jehoshaphat, the son of Nimshi, go in and make him arise from among his brethren and carry him to an inner chamber. Pick up this young man and take him into an inside bedroom. Then take the box of oil and pour it on his head. In other words, Elisha the prophet is giving orders on how this child will be anointed king. Oil was poured over their head. Normally it would run down their face and down their beard, except this is going to be a very young man. When you come, look out there, Jehu, the son of Jehoshaphat. Make him arise, take him into an inner chamber. I have anointed thee king over Israel. You're going to say to him, you're going to pick up this child. You're going to take him into an inner bedroom. You've got a box that has oil in it. You're going to pour this oil over him, and you're going to say this: I have anointed you king. Let me read the exact words. Over Israel. Then open the door and flee and tarry not. Tarry is spend time someplace. Remember that at the end of the book of Luke and at the beginning of the book of Acts of the Apostles, it said, tarry in the city of Jerusalem until you be endued with power from on high. Tarry, spend some time. Stay there. until this happens. Spend time there. He's telling them the opposite now. You pour oil over him, you say these words, I am anointing you, King of Israel. You get out the door and take off. Flee. Tarry not. Don't spend any time there. So the young man, even the young men, the prophet, went to Ramoth Gilead. That's the place where they were. And when he came, behold, the captains of the host were sitting, and he said, I have an errand to thee, O captain. And Jehud said, unto which of all of us? There's a bunch of us here. Which of us are you talking to? He said, to you, O captain. And he arose, and he went into the house, and he poured the oil on his head, and he said, Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, I have anointed thee king over the people of the Lord, even over Israel, not the two nations of Judah in the south that occasionally had a good king, but the 10 tribes in the northern part called Israel that never had a good king. And he arose and he poured the oil. Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, I have anointed thee king over the people of the Lord, even over Israel, that thou shalt smite the house of Ahab thy master, the one in charge of Israel. Ahab, king, miserable, no good for nothing, prophet killing. All these terrible things are going to happen to Ahab in his house. And I have just made you king in his place. You will smite the house of Ahab thy master, that I may avenge the blood of my servants the prophets. Ahab and Jezebel went out to kill. Remember, there were 450 prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel when God answered with fire that came down. He said, I'm avenging the eye veggie. We just had somebody pop in I haven't seen for a while. Yeah, we got more birds. We had 2. Now you're seeing 4. There's actually 6 of the gray ones. I'll chat with you in a little bit. So he says, now, I'm avenging Ahab and his bad wife Jezebel killing the prophets. No, he said, the prophets and the blood of all the servants of the Lord at the hand of Jezebel, for the whole house of Ahab shall perish. And I will cut off from Ahab, and he mentions all the males that are left in Israel. And I will make the house of Ahab like the house of Jeroboam. Jeroboam was the first king of Israel. He said, I will make him like him. The son of Nebat, and like the house of Baasha, the son of Ahijah. And the dogs, remember I told you that any male children of Ahab and Jezebel, if they died in the city, the dogs would eat them. If they died in the country, the birds would eat them. And the dogs shall eat Jezebel. Oof. And there shall be none to bury her. That, considering she was queen, and there won't even be anything to bury. And The dogs shall eat Jezebel in the portions of Jezreel, and there shall be none to bury her. And he opened the door and he fled. He was told, you say this, God has anointed you king. You are taking Ahab's place. Get out of there as fast as you can. That's exactly what he did. He opened the door and he fled. Then Jehu came forth to the servants of the Lord, and he said, is all well? Hey, everything cool? Is all well? Wherefore came this mad fellow to thee? And he said unto them, you know the man and his communication. And they said, it is false. Tell us now. And he said, thus and thus spoke the Lord to me, saying, I have anointed thee king over Israel. And they hasted, and they took every man his garment, and put it under him on top of the stairs, and blew with the trumpets, crying, Jehu is king. That's how kings are. They're anointed, and all the people say, so and so is now the king. So that happened. Jehu slays Jehoram at Jezreel. And we are almost where the little boy now, a 6-year-old child, becomes king. So Jehu, the son of Jehoshaphat, now Joram, had kept Ramoth Gilead, and all Israel because of the king of Syria. But King Joram was returned to be healed to Jezreel of the wounds that he fought with Hazael king of Syria. And Jehu said, if it be your minds, then let none go forth nor escape out of the city to go to tell it in Jezreel. If Joram recovers from his wounds, then let nobody escape and go to tell them what happened in Jezreel. So Jehu rode in a chariot, and he went to Jezreel, for Joram lay there. And as Ahaziah, king of Judah, came down to see Joram, and there stood a watchman on the tower of Jezreel. It wasn't exactly a job that was assigned, but you've heard of people who were watchmen. They stood on the walls of the city where they could see out into the wilderness, and they could turn around and they could see what was inside of the city. They had an important job, to be watchmen, to know what was going on. And he says, there stood a watchman on the tower of Jezreel, and he spied the company of Jehu as he came, and he said, I see a company. I see a bunch of people. And Joram said, take a horseman and go to meet him. And let him say, are you coming in peace? Or you are enemy? So he went up on horseback to meet him. Thus saith the king, is it in peace? And Jehu said, what has to do with peace? turn thee behind me. And the watchman told him, saying, the messenger came to them, but he cometh not again. Then he sent out a second one on horseback. And he came to them and said, are you coming in peace? And Jehu said, what have you got to do with peace? Get behind me. And the watchman told, saying, he came even unto them and came not again. And the driving is like the driving of Jehu, the son of Nimshi, for he drives, or he was riding a horse furiously. And Joram said, make ready. And his chariot was made ready. And Joram, king of Israel, and Ahaziah, king of Judah, went out, each in his chariot, and they went out against Jehu, and they met him in the portion of Naboth the Jezreelite. Remember Naboth? Anybody remember who Naboth was? I'll remind you. We discussed it maybe 6 weeks ago. And I was telling you that Sister Rose, my longtime partner in ministry, when she graduated from Bible college, she was chosen to give a speech. And this was the portion of scripture that she decided to speak about at her graduation. There was a man, his name was Naboth, and he had a vineyard, grape plants. Ahab, the king, had as many grape plants, that many, many, many vineyards, one after another, after another, after another. But right near his house, in the middle of all of his vineyards, was the vineyard of Naboth. And he wanted that vineyard to make his vineyards complete. And he killed Naboth in order to acquire his vineyard. Naboth said, I will not give you what my parents have worked for all their life and have given me and have left me. I cannot give to you what my parents have worked for and given to me, even if it costs me my life. That's who Naboth was. And it came to pass when Joram saw Jehu that he said, are you coming in peace, Jehu? And he said, what peace? So long as the whoredoms of my mother Jezebel and her rich calves are so many? What do you mean peace? How can the son of a woman like this come in peace? And he arose and departed, and he went to Samaria, which is in Israel. Jehu met with the brethren of Azariah, the king of Judah, and he said, we are the brethren of Ahaziah, and we go down to salute the children of the king and the children of the queen. And he said, take them alive. And they took them alive, and they slew them at the pit of the shearing house. Shearing, where they shear the sheep of their wool. And they took them alive, and they slew them at the pit of the shearing house. Even 42 men. And none of them were left. I'm going to, I need to get a pen here. Let me see if this is, okay. going to, today is the 15th, right? Yeah, 7, 15, 15, Wednesday p.m. And I'm going to jump over. We've been talking about the house of Israel recently, where Ahab and Jezebel were king and queen. We're going to jump over now to Joash, and I'm only going to mention it and read a little bit and close for this part of the lesson. We're going to go to Joash. We're going to Judah, the smaller portion, where they sometime had good kings. In the 7th year of Jehoiada, Jehoiada went and he fetched the rulers over hundreds with the captains of the guard. And he brought them into the house of the Lord, and he made a covenant with them. And he made an oath. We're in the southern portion, the portion called Judah, where Jerusalem was, where there was a temple. So we have priests, we have the temple. The prophets are in the northern part. In the 7th year of Jehoiada, they took an oath in the house of the Lord, and they showed them the king's son. And he commanded them, saying, "This is the thing that you shall do. A third part of you that enter in on the Sabbath shall be keepers of the watch of the king's house." What's this got to do with the child? Well, a third of you on Saturday are going to be keepers, and you're going to watch you're going to take care of the king's house, not the temple. You're going to go to the king's house, a third of you. And a third at the gate behind the guard. So you can, from the gate, you can watch the house so that it can't be broken into. And 2 parts of you will go forth on the Sabbath, and they shall keep watch of the house of the Lord of the king. And you shall compass the king round about, every man with his weapons in his hand. You're going to be armed, and you've got to watch out for it and take care of this king. Keep your weapons in your hands. Anybody comes within range of being able to hurt him, let him be slain. And be ye with the king as he goes out and when he comes in. Wherever the king goes, whatever the king does, you better be there, you better be armed, you better be taking care of him. And the captains over hundreds did according to all the things that Jehoiada the priest commanded, and every man his men. They came in on the Sabbath, and they would go out on the Sabbath. And they came to Jehoiada the priest, and to the captains over hundreds, And the priests gave King David's spears. Things that had belonged to King David were saved. There was the spear, I don't know if I'm using the right word, spear, that David, when he cut off the head of the Philistine giant, that had been saved. That had, among other things. So he said, no, you're not just going to use just regular old weapons. You're going to get King David's spear and shield. They were in the temple of the Lord. They were hidden. And the guards stood every man with his weapon in his hand, round about the king, from the right corner of this temple to the left corner of the temple, along by the altar and by the temple. And he brought forth the king's son, and he put a crown upon him. And he gave him the testimony, and they made him king. And they anointed him. You know what's going to happen now, right? I just told you what's done when somebody is made king. It is said that they are anointed to be king, and then everybody says, long live so-and-so, so-and-so is king. And they brought forth the king's son, and they put the crown upon him, and they gave him the testimony, and they made him king, and they anointed him with oil, and they clapped their hands, and they said, God save the king. And in the 7th year, Jehoiada strengthened himself, the head of the temple. And he took the captains of hundreds, Azariah the son of Jeroham, and Ishmael the son of Jehohanan, and Azariah the son of Obed, and Messiah the son of Eliah, and Elishaphat the son of Zachary, in the covenant with him. They made an agreement, and they went about in Judah, and they gathered the Levites. Everybody that worked in the temple was of the tribe of Levi. Not all were priests, but everybody that had anything to do in the temple was of the tribe of Levi. Then there was the family of Asaph, they were the singers. And then there was the family of Aaron, those males were the chief or the high priests. According to families, they had specific jobs within the temple. But everybody that worked in the temple was of the tribe of Levi. And they went about in Judah, and they gathered all the Levites from the cities of Judah. If they happened to not be in the temple, or where, for whatever reason, they were someplace in Judah, they gathered them together. And all the congregation made a covenant with the king in the house of God. And he said, behold, the king's son shall reign, as the Lord said of the sons of David. This is the thing that ye shall do. A third of you, and then we're going to repeat some of this, going in on the Sabbath, at the gate, let nobody come into the house of the Lord except the priests, and they that minister of the Levites. They shall go in, for they're holy. They had jobs appointed to do certain things. They could go in and do their jobs. The Levites will compass the king round about, Every man will have weapons, and everybody will watch the king when he goes out, when he comes in. So the Levites and all Judah did according to the things that Jehoiada the priest told them to do. And they did this on the Sabbath. Coming in and going out. For Jehoiada the priest dismissed not the courses. Moreover, Jehoiada the priest delivered the captains 100 spears, bucklers, shields that had been David's, that had been kept in the house of the Lord. And he had set all the people at his hand, from his right side of the temple to the left. Then they brought out the king's son, and they put upon him the crown, and they gave him the testimony, and they made him the king. And Jehoiada and his sons anointed him, and they all said, God save the king. Let me end right here. 7, 15, 15. I don't know that it's the greatest place that I can end, but it's about as good as any other place. We'll continue this next week, and I'm going to close the video now so I can chat with the folks in our live Bible study. Now we're an hour 27 minutes into this program, so until the next video, blessings on you.